I've been a software developer for nearly a quarter century, and I've been using AI-assisted programming in my work for the last 7 months, and I very seldom write code by hand now. The sizes of commits and reviews are getting very large, and they're verging on it being unmanageable as a lead to effectively review software written by others. And if you're anything like me, you might be starting to notice the limitations of at least the current generation of models that are available as of May 2026. So for me, I'm a bit of a skeptic of technological trends, and that's partly because I've seen practices and methodologies and programming models come and go. There comes a time where the loudest and most annoying voices are telling everyone that if you're a true professional, that you must be using a particular new thing, or at the very least, you shouldn't be using the older and outdated thing. I think one of the ones that everybody knows really well is the letter that Dijkstra wrote to make the case against using the goto statement. And to this day, there are still some very popular applications using goto. And if you read open source software written in C, you'll see this pattern used very frequently as a way of dealing with exit logic, particularly in the case of there being an error. If you don't like it, maybe don't use YouTube, because the most popular open source video processing library, which basically the entire internet is built on, uses this regularly. One of the things I've noticed when even using the best models is that they don't really care if there's a little bit of duplication in the logic they write. And I think that this is perhaps a feature of the way that the logic is created rather than anything else. See, I think that the models prefer to write more tokens rather than fewer. And if you've been using these models too, I'm sure you've noticed the repetition in their textual responses, including the mic drop bottom line that the models seem to compulsively add to the ends of their code summaries. Duplication isn't a problem in and of itself, but I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I think that good programmers tend to have a natural aversion to repetition. I've thought about this over years, and I've had to face it directly in some code bases, but I think it's borne out from experience as well. Repetition and duplication are fine in a working system, but a bug-free system is a fantasy, and the duplication and the repetition are where the bugs hide. And when you're maintaining an existing system by adding a new rule or behavior, you can introduce bugs without really knowing about it simply because you don't find all of the code paths that are relevant. Now, this isn't a new problem exactly. I think that there's really been a real bias for developers to choose the easy path and to just fix something by making it work. And then there's even organization reasons why this could be rewarded. The new models amplify developers' proclivity to duplicate code because it's easy. And on balance, I think that that's a bad thing. One other thing that I've been wrestling with for the past few weeks is the model's propensity to add defensive code to procedures that they're editing. What this sometimes looks like is gracefully adding a default to a particular value so that downstream code doesn't break. This is all well and good, but there are some reasons why defensive programming can be a bad thing. Firstly, by adding this extra specific behavior, you're making your code more difficult to reason about. Branching and special cases increase cyclomatic complexity, and in at least some of these cases, an error is relevant for the user to see, and if your software silently hides that error and succeeds for several months before you discover that the code that you've been running has a special case that made it look like it was working when it actually wasn't, that could be painful and expensive to repair. The other more directly annoying case of this is where an automatically introduced default or failover value is actually not what you really wanted from the system. I've been working on some code that maps a collection of user-entered textual codes to a more complete set of materialized data with primary keys and whatnot. If you delete a code, then you want the underlying object to be removed from the other collection, and for that object to be updated or otherwise left in place. This arrangement seems to be fairly difficult for the models to grasp, even in the presence of unit tests, and I've found myself fighting with my IDE to remove the failover that reinstated an intentionally deleted object as a failover. Very frustrating. This has led me to a conclusion that is sort of unintuitive. The new models are making some things easier, a lot of things, but the things that they're not making easier are still hanging around. And those things are the hard things. What that means for us developers is that for the moment, we can quickly deal with the easy problems, and now we're left with the gnarly ones, which the models can't solve automatically. And some of those are the problems that people have difficulty solving too. So life for the next little while is going to look like bouts of things going very, very smoothly, tool automated, and periods where you're stuck on the really, really hard stuff and that you have to struggle with and get no easy win on. And I think that this is the new normal. Enjoy.